Welcome back. Before we get into the content today, a brief piece of housekeeping. If you read the doom and gloom comment I left on Chapter 2 of Ringworld, you may think I am done with that series. I am not. Instead, what I'm going to do is every other week we are going to read something else for Friday. And it is going to be Fridays. I know Chapter 1 was posted on a Saturday, but it is going to be Fridays. So, if you like Ringworld, we're going to keep going with that. It's going to take twice as long, obviously, to get through the book. But there's going to be stuff for people who don't like Ringworld. And of course, the Warhammer stuff will continue to flow as blood for the blood god. And on that note, let us turn to the Astra Militarum and raising the tithe. Every world within the Imperium is ruled over by a governor or commander. Whether such men inherit their title by blood or are awarded it for some great service in the Emperor's name, their responsibilities are the same. These governors are afforded absolute authority to rule their realm precisely as they see fit. In return, however, each governor is beholden to the wider Imperium, expected to ensure that a set of key responsibilities are fulfilled without fail. Each governor is responsible for the day-to-day defense of his or her own realm, for the Imperial Guard cannot be deployed to handle every brushfire war, piratical raid, and minor incursion. To combat such threats, governors are expected to raise, train, and equip their own planetary defense forces to safeguard their holdings. Fortifications must be raised, manned, and maintained. The skies must be watched, and the populace must be carefully monitored lest the outer dark creep into the hearts and minds of loyal Imperial citizens. When the people forget their duty, they are no longer human and become something less than beasts. They have no place in the bosom of humanity, nor in the heart of the Emperor. Let them die and be forgotten. Prime Edicts of the Holy Synod of the Adeptus Ministorum. Perhaps most importantly, there is the Imperial Tithe. Based upon archaic criteria assessed by Munitorum officials, each world must provide 1/10 of its total military force to fight for the Imperial Guard. It is an offense punishable by death for a governor to supply substandard soldiery when the tithe is exacted, or to provide insufficient numbers. Furthermore, it is a capital offense should these soldiers lack proper uniforms, sufficient training, or appropriate levels of genetic purity. For these reasons, though some worlds recruit by caste, population density, geography, or even lottery, most governors are given to pouring their best men into such regimental foundings. This is less out of a sense of altruism or duty than it is an ongoing effort of self-preservation. Nonetheless, on many worlds, it is a matter of some honor to be chosen for this duty. Indeed, it is not uncommon for lives to be lost in the fierce competitions that the tithe often spurs. In a few rare cases, such as the Bardellan Wars of Proving, or the Charon's Cluster Schism, localized wars can even be triggered in the lead-up to the month of tithing. Planetary authorities are normally quick to crush such counterproductive disputes, fearful of the concurrent waste of tithe-grade manpower and the apparent loss of control in front of Munitorum officials. In times of great peril, the Departamento Munitorum is permitted to call upon governors to raise quantities of forces substantially above their normal tithe. Such measures can see entire cities or continents all but emptied, or key societal strata removed en masse. When the Imperium demands its pound of flesh, it is not within a governor's rights to refuse. And each knows that next time it could so easily be his world that requires the protection of the wider Imperium. Only through compliance with the tithe can such security be guaranteed, for only worlds of proven loyalty may rely upon receiving imperial aid when their own defenses prove insufficient. Isolated worlds will not long survive, and the Munitorum's most economical resource to punish rebellion is often simply to cut a world loose. Regimental Organization. From the greatest crusading armada to the smallest watchtower garrison, Imperial Guard armies are composed of a mixture of distinct regiments. These basic units of organization have not changed since the aftermath of the Horus Heresy. Each regiment is raised from a single world, its personnel bringing with them their native dialects, uniforms, customs, and loyalties. However, any indigenous military structure is exchanged for the Munitorum enforced standard. Internal politics, grudges, or debts are, for the most part, ignored and allowed to fester so long as the morale and performance of the regiment is not affected. That said, the regiment's attached commissars will gun down without compunction any who would put their own personal vendettas before the wider cause of the Imperium's wars. Almost without fail, regiments are composed of one primary service arm, be it artillery, infantry, armor, or specialists such as abhumans. Though each regiment can consist of between 3 and 20 companies, and may may number from a couple of hundred men to tens of thousands. It is a rare regiment that is trained in more than one of the doctrines of warfare practiced by the Imperial Guard. The Scala Progenium. An institution that has stood for thousands of years, the Scala Progenium is nominally an offshoot of the Departmentum Ministorum, though in practice its facilities are staffed by hardline brethren of the Adeptus Ministorum. Housing the orphans of imperial worthies, the Scala strives to ensure that children born to those of quality are neither abandoned nor squandered as a potential resource. The Scala has many fortified facilities scattered in secret locations across the galaxy. It is the belief of those who maintain these institutions that, through sufficient rigor, any youth of appropriate origins can be turned into a valuable servant of the Imperium. Each Scala Progenium facility is run according to meticulous structures applied by Departmentum Ministorum officials. The Scala's orphan wards must undertake a punishing daily routine of prayer, lessons, combat drill, and chores that leaves them hollow-eyed and exhausted. Every Emperor Day, all wards are assessed for aptitude, piety, and dedication. Those found to excel in a particular area are split off into special classes, teaching them to become elite troopers of the Militarum Tempestus, or even cadet commissars ready for transference to the Officio Prefectus. Upon coming of age, most students are sent on their way, unquestioningly adopting the role they have been conditioned for. Those without the aptitude for a role in the wider Imperium form a staff of menials and guards who can look to the needs of their founding orphanage. A very few vanish altogether, swept away under the auspices of mysterious imperial officials to provide altogether more secretive services to the Imperium. To the casual observer, this may seem a weakness, as regiments are, by necessity, compelled to rely upon one another for the combined arms approach advocated by the Tactica Imperium. However, this lack of autonomy is another measure to prevent rebellion, ensuring that even if a whole regiment turns from the light of the Emperor, their lack of versatility will soon see them brought to heel and punished for their disloyalty. Some planets are able to raise a variety of regiments. Cadia or Armageddon, for example, are huge worlds embroiled in seemingly endless wars, whose populace are given ample opportunity to train in various aspects of warfare. By comparison, other worlds take great and often justifiable pride in their reputation for training a specific kind of regiment to exceptional standards. The pale-skinned, dark-eyed stealth infantry of the night world Prometheron, or the clockwork discipline of the Caladian artillery brigades, are excellent examples of this. Feral or or feudal worlds, on the other hand, often provide only infantry or rough rider regiments, thus circumventing huge potential culture shock. Leadership at company and regimental level is a duty assigned to officers recruited from the same world, and normally from the same founding, as the regiment they lead. This practice ensures that nobles are placed in charge of those culturally disposed to offer them deference. Officers stay with the troopers they have spent months or years training, and disruption to regimental morale is minimized. These officers will be supported and observed by regimental commissars, attached during their founding by the Munitorum. These men must look to their regiment's morale and loyalty above all else, and will take any measure, no matter how extreme, to ensure the men do not disgrace themselves, whether on or off the field of battle. Certain regiments of specialists can be an exception to the organizational norm, most notably abhumans, rough riders, and super heavy tanks. Though they can conceivably be sent into battle en masse, it is standard practice to break such regiments into companies, or even squads, before attaching them to more typical regiments, where their specialized skills can give their adoptive comrades a much-needed edge. The Imperial Guard at war. In those instances where a threat to the Imperium cannot be repulsed by local defense forces and naval assets, the Departamento Munitorum will sanction immediate deployment of the Imperial Guard. Such a response will be guided by the wisdom imparted in the strategic parables of the Munitorum. This threat response pattern has served the Imperium well for thousands of years. Initial forces will be drawn from localized assets deemed sufficient for the task at hand. This includes any guardsmen already mobilized within response range, along with regiments raised from neighboring worlds. Such forces can be disparate in nature, requiring officers to prove themselves adept at working with whatever material is to hand. Should a threat escalate, or prove greater than initial response forces can handle, the Munitorum will expand their designated conflict zone, drawing down relentless waves of reinforcements to crash upon the foe until it is entirely ground to dust. In this way, even the onrushing fury of an orc Waaagh can be brought to a grinding halt, where the nimble Eldar drowned in manpower and ordnance. Regiments en route to their designated war zone usually possess some previous military experience, whether culturally inherited or earned through campaigns already fought in the Imperium's name. While aboard their troop ships, these regiments will be further trained to deal with the specifics of the war into which they are being sent. Whether this is learning to recognize and combat particularly inhuman foes, use of environment-specific equipment, or acclimatization to peculiarities of the destination world, such orientation can be vital. Imperial Guard regiments from feral worlds, for example, would be rendered catatonic if unprepared for the immensity of an Imperial Hive city. On deployment, Imperial Guard forces operate according to the tenets of the Tactica Imperium, stringently enforced by their rigid chains of command. Regiments complement one another's strengths and weaknesses, ensuring that the army as a whole is greater than the sum of its parts. When facing especially ferocious or peculiar enemies, such as demons spilling from a warp rent, or the horror of a tyrannid swarm, this standardized method of making war can encounter costly snags. Yet with the constant flow of new manpower enjoyed by High Command, individual engagements with casualty rates as high as 100% can be considered rousingly successful, provided the fallen first achieve their allotted tasks or highlight some strategic weakness in the foe. The Adeptus Ministorum. The essential remit of the great and glorious Adeptus Ministorum is the furtherance of the Emperor's veneration. Nowhere is this mission more important than in ministering to the faith of the vast ranks of the Emperor's armies. Many men of faith gravitate toward the Imperial Guard, where their presence is sorely needed, both on and off the bloody field of war. Horrors untold bedevil the soldiers of the Imperial Guard, many of whom will barely have made peace with the concept of space flight before they are faced by the unspeakable heresy of the alien or the traitor. Mutation and abomination proliferate while men are slain in graphic and grisly fashion before the eyes of their horrified comrades. Often the soldiers of the Imperial Guard must do their duty upon battlefields, the mere spectacle of which may be so apocalyptic as to shake the reason of the bravest individual. In such circumstances, blind faith can be potent armor for a man's soul. For this reason, the Ministorum maintains a considerable presence amongst the ranks of the Imperial Guard. Whether orating from the laud-hailer-laden pulpit of the shrine deck, or from atop piled ration crates in a hastily cleared corner of the soldiers' mess, Ministorum clergy have a huge impact upon the confidence and courage of their allotted flock. At the commencement of a campaign, most guardsmen have been marched amongst thousands into the close-packed hold of a starship, surrounded by strange and often frightening sights and sounds. Their destination a tangle of mystery and rumor, their homes and families never to be seen again. Such men find a refuge in the familiarity of imperial scripture. Many newly founded regiments will cling to their religion like a drowning man clings to driftwood. It is the duty of the Ministorum to shape this fervor into something that High Command can use. If guardsmen have questions or doubts, the Ministorum must bolster these unfortunates' shield of ignorance before they stray into the wilds of dangerous speculation. Should the slightest sign of warp, taint, or heresy present itself, either within the ranks of the Imperial Guard or without, it is the role of the Ministorum to ensure this is swiftly dealt with. Nothing restores a soldier's faith faster than watching accused seditionists or mutants from amongst another regiment's ranks lashed to stakes and set ablaze for their sins. While such measures are doubtless draconian, none can question the Ministorum's flair for grand and faith-affirming spectacles, nor its value to the morale of the Imperial Guard. There are those who raise their voices in anguish and sorrow for the plight of mankind. Such faithless folk wail of an end to all days, of a final damnation for us all. I say to you, these fools are wrong. Liars I name them, heretics and sayers of doom. Listen not to such heathens, my brothers, for these are glorious days. Rejoice, for all may stand and fight for a truly righteous cause, and any man, no matter how humble, can earn everlasting glory through martyrdom in the Emperor's sight. Confessor Holdwyn before the Black Creek Massacre. The Mechanicus and the Guard. The men of the Imperial Guard are not the only element of the imperial war machine that requires ministrations of a priesthood. The Adeptus Mechanicus are masters of arcane automation and technological mysticism, who look to the provision and well-being of the Imperial Guard's countless engines of war. Without these lore-keepers of high technology, there would be no ships to carry the Imperial Guard between worlds, and no weapons with which to hold back the countless foes that seek to overwhelm mankind. Imperial Guard vehicles and equipment fall into two basic categories. The majority of their material is bulk manufactured on an immense, relentless scale on industrial worlds throughout the Imperium. Some planets specialize in a particular pattern of vehicle or weapon, such as Armageddon with its vast chimera manufactories, or Sanctus Valorium with its renowned lasecraft workshops. Others, like Parabellus III or Kogan's Toil, are equipped to turn out a range of the tanks, guns, and munitions that the Emperor's many wars demand. To supplement this endless tide of ruggedly built basic equipment, Mechanicus Forge Worlds will, on occasion, provide complements of far rarer war machines to aid their imperial allies. Such vehicles incorporate the higher mysteries of the Omnissiah. The templates to construct these machines may only exist enshrined upon a single forge world, or may have been lost altogether, making deployment of these relics of war a decision of some weight. The Tech Priest Engine Seers are the best known Martians within the ranks of the Imperial Guard. These cybernetic holy men stand aloof from the guardsmen that surround them, concerned only with tending to the machine spirits of their foster regiments' vehicles and weaponry. Yet there are other, rarer classes of tech priest who aid the Imperial Guard at war. Tacticus cogno savants sit amidst octopoidal tangles of cabling, deep within the bridges of Leviathan command crawlers. Logisticus adepts assist the coordination of Munitorum supply lines, their servo-scribe harnesses spewing kilometers of parchment every hour. Communication equipment, tactical hololiths, support servitors, and countless other vital high command assets are provided by the Mechanicus and continue to function only through the diligence of the mysterious tech priests. For every unsettling sight the galaxy paraded before my eyes, still some of the strangest came from within our own ranks. Take the tech priests, for one, all glowing eyes and waving cables, nests of wires and wasted flesh. To think that any man might choose to do that to himself voluntarily. It fair sets my teeth on edge. And they're secretive, too, always removed, always aloof. Dealing with them was tougher than getting a bile tick off your boot. Yet for all that, my boys wouldn't have lasted a day in the field without the red robes. Getting engines running again, fixing up weapons systems, calming angry machine spirits. They'd walk through fire to save one of their precious tanks, those tech priests, even if they couldn't care less about the men inside. From the collected memoirs of General Curtis Hicks, Catachan 4 Army Group. Abhumans. When mankind first spread out amongst the stars, they voyaged to the furthest corners of the galaxy. Worlds were settled with diverse and unusual environmental conditions that were to shape and change the peoples that called them home. After the Age of Strife, as the Imperium regained contact with the scattered seeds of humanity, they discovered human populations who had devolved into entirely separate subspecies. Some of these were freakishly altered or irredeemably hostile, and deserved only annihilation. A few, most notably the lumbering ogrins and keen-eyed ratlings, were accepted into the Imperial fold, albeit with hesitance and distaste. These races are known as abhumans, and their thinly spread populations contribute regiments to the Militarium Auxilia. The small numbers and specialized abilities of abhuman soldiers means that Ogrin and Ratling regiments are almost always split for distribution to more conventional Imperial Guard formations. Abhumans evoke revulsion in their genetic cousins, for whom the degenerate inhumanity of their forms is only a step from the heresy of mutation. They must be constantly watched by commissars and priests alike for any signs of excess deviancy, and are taught self-disgust and a desire to atone for their failures of birth through honest toil in the Emperor's name. However, these squads have proven their worth time and again. Such units as Magog's Rattling Rifles and the Damocles Crusade, or the Bulgrins who carried the breach during the siege of Gregoria, have won great fame. The Scholastica Psychana. There are those whose value to the Imperial Guard outweighs the rabid moral repugnance they evoke. Most notable amongst these are the warp-sensitive psychers of the Scholastica Psychana. The untrained psycher is a beacon to the demons of the warp. His lack of control and improper absence of self-loathing presenting a deadly danger to all. To counter such hazards, the black ships of the Inquisition ply the space lanes of the Imperium, endlessly harvesting nascent psychers and proven witches to take back to Terra for assessment and classification. The fate of many is to feed the infernal mechanisms of the Golden Throne, or be yoked to the blazing beacon of the Astronomicon. The most stable find a different calling, fighting amongst the ranks of the Imperial Guard as weird vein psychers. There are numerous Scholastica Psychana training facilities in remote locations across the Imperium, isolated from populated systems and known warp anomalies. Security at such facilities is nigh impregnable, intended as much to keep the students in as to ensure outside threats are repulsed. Within the austere surroundings of these psionically shielded scalas, the weird vein psychers meditate. They gain understanding of and train to control their potent abilities, learning how they may better serve the forces of the Imperium. Alongside their mental and spiritual training, those psychers marked for service are taught the basics of close-quarters combat and battlefield survival. But it is the warp-fueled devastation these individuals can unleash that has won the Imperial Guard so many battles. And it is here that we are going to bring our video to a close. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing, liking the video, and maybe sharing the channel. I know ASMR is it's not quite to the point where that's like something you're going to be sharing your friends. But if you happen to know a lot of people who these videos would be appropriate for, then please spread the word. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.